So welcome back to Design for Impact. It's good to have everyone again. So today we're going to focus on, or going to talk about how can we solve the right problem. I think about sort of like finding the right problem as like you could like look at it from different perspectives, I guess. The first one is like, when you go to your doctor and they're like trying to understand the symptoms and they start doing tests to rule things out, to sort of like identify like the right disease or something that you have, right? Like coronavirus versus the flu, for example, because that sort of defines what the treatment option for you is. And then the third thing is like fixing a toilet or, fixing like a tap in the kitchen. It's like if you don't have the right pieces in order and if you don't make sure they're sort of like in the right place at the right time, then, you could be fixing the wrong thing, or you could just like, absolutely kill the kitchen, or all of a sudden you've got a bathroom that looks like that. Russell Akov, I think Bushan, you were talking about, watching some of his videos. He talks about how we fail more often because we solve the wrong problem rather than, because we get the wrong solution to the right problem. And that's really interesting. And I think that's, some people are sort of the idea of like, don't spend a lot of time thinking about the problem, just think about the solution. And it's like, that's almost like a build it and they will come mentality, which, we know usually doesn't work or has a very low chance of success. Whereas when you take the time to actually understand the problem, and that could be, by experimenting with ideas as well, because that helps you understand the problem more, then you have a much better sort of chance at succeeding or coming up with a solution that solves that. And the other thing I think to keep in mind is that, like I said, solving a problem can lead to more problems. So that's sort of like some of the issues, I guess, that comes with when you're thinking about the problem. These are some of the issues that you could face. So I heard this story and I wanted to sort of share it with you and get your thoughts. So this story is about, basically, I mean, the pictures don't do it justice, obviously, but there were these women in Africa and they needed to, every day sort of like walk for an hour to the well to get water and then walk back home. And so some people decided, this is probably a problem worth solving. So what we're going to do is we're going to sort of put a well, or sort of like, put pipes in so that they've just got like a pump outside their house or sort of like near their village, so they don't have to walk a lot, right? And each house sort of has its own pump. So first question is like, what do you think is this like a better thing or is this a worse thing, and why? So one of the things that the women actually complained about was, this was like our time to like socialize, right? So they would walk in groups from like their houses or their village all the way to the well, and they're having fun, they're talking, they're catching up on what's happening with everyone, and then all of a sudden, you introduce this thing that's supposed to like increase convenience and things, and it's like, yeah, but we don't get time to socialize. That's I really appreciate that you, like, every single one of you sort of said, yes, there is positives, but there is also consequences. That really sort of like, that's the type of thinking that we want to do. So I really like that, actually. Okay. So I think that the challenge with problems is that we want to make a difference, right? It's not that, we just, care about our back pocket. No, we genuinely want to make a difference, but at the same time, we don't want to do any harm. So, you want to solve the problem, but you don't want to introduce any new problems accidentally. All right. So we're going to talk about 3 frameworks, and we're going to sort of like, this is going to be a pretty deep session. So I reckon by the end of it, you'll be pretty exhausted. So the first one is like, why is the problem happening, right? Which is almost like that root cause. And one caveat I think is important. It's like, none of these frameworks are like, this is the framework we have to use, right? It really depends on the problem, and it depends on the context, and it depends on lots of things. But I think having tools almost that help you kind of like, oh yeah, I can use a hammer for this, or I can use like a prong for that. It's like, okay, I've got things in my toolkit, right? So that's sort of like the approach that I want you to take with this. And we'll sort of try to use all the 3 frameworks today, but at least it sort of introduces the concept, and then you can delve deeper into it. So the first framework is going to be talking about why is the problem happening. The second one is going to be talking about like, who's the problem affecting and how is it affecting them. and not who's like the one person this problem is affecting. It's like, no, who are all the people it's affecting? And then, like, the women, for example, they need to get water, okay, but what are they like, how's this problem affecting them personally, and what are they trying to achieve, right? Versus like the husband, or the dad, versus the children, versus like the aunties and uncles, versus like someone in the government. So it's like thinking about all the people and how it's affecting them. And then the last thing is like, what are the consequences of this problem, like when you zoom out? The first one is like root cause analysis, or it's often called like QQ diagram, or fishbone, or Ishikawa, I think, diagram. And I think it came out of Toyota when they sort of like it's like a very analysis heavy approach to like understanding, okay, we had this problem, but what caused it? Like, what are all the factors that caused it? And can we get to like a single factor, or 3 or 4 factors that we're like, okay, the interaction of these factors is what's causing the problem. And we'll talk about that. And sort of like on the very right, you see like the event that's happening, whether it's like, say, Toyota produced a bad car, or like the airbags weren't up to standard, okay? And then you sort of go back about like, okay, is there a problem like in our manufacturing process? Is it how we train our team members? Like, what's the problem there? And then the next one is like, what are the consequences of the problem in terms of like zooming out, right? So like, how does this affect the people and like the family and the community, versus like, how does it affect society? How does it affect the economy? How does it affect the planet? Right. And often, I guess, people think about like society and economy, but they don't think enough about the planet, which is probably why we're, facing climate change. And then the last one is like, okay, who is it affecting? What's the group of people called? Or like the similar people called, like parents or women or mothers, whatever it is. How is it affecting them? And then what do they need? And the what do they need is sort of what Kyle was talking about, in terms of, it's not just we need water. It's like, what do you need the water for? Like, why is this even a need?